Welcome, Jonah, and thank you for agreeing to be part of this investigative study. I'll avoid asking you the much loaded question of what it is you do. Instead, I prefer to ask you, how do you define yourself as an artist and what is your creative process?
I would define myself as a musician and a VJ. And as an artist, I either create visuals with other musicians, poets, or performers of different talents, or I perform music, sometimes sequenced with my own visuals.
Okay, and do you make any sort of income off your artistic endeavors?
I make My primary income is through music and through VJing.
Okay, excellent. And how do you exactly market yourself as an artist?
I market myself through social media, through Instagram, my Facebook page, Twitter, and in like the cultural district, more like through diplomatic ways like CVs and EPK stuff.
Okay, excellent. So a lot of what you do really is dependent on the internet. So I was just kind of curious, when you are posting things online, I think most of us artists, we kind of recognize what the pros are, of course, networking, advertising, whatnot. But do you think of the cons when you decide to post some of your projects online?
No,
No, you never kind of think of the consequences of someone taking something, posting it, spreading it. It's just something that doesn't cross your mind at all.
no, that would be great. There's It's such a big world that um, the more shares, the better. For me, where I work in performance industry, my primary income is from events, not from shares on Facebook or something. So if somebody shares something, it's better.
Okay, cool. So you definitely see it as a positive, and the pros for sure outweigh any negatives that might occur. I was just kind of curious, are you familiar with the Canadian Intellectual Property Office?
Now I am, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, their website's actually a super useful tool. It's basically set up for artists to educate ourselves. It helps us figure out exactly how we want to work with industrial design rights, ownership, trademarks. And they do provide online registration as well, which makes things super easy. They're constantly updating themselves through surveys and quizzes. I was just kind of curious, have you ever gone online and perhaps looked about copywriting some of your stuff just to protect what you are doing online?
As a musician, I'm registered with SOCAN, which takes care of all of that in the audio world. As a VJ, um, it's really the content is on three-dimensional objects and stuff like that. So it's really not something I'm too worried about.
Okay, excellent. Now, I know yourself, you're actually involved in working with a collective. You tend to do a lot of projects within the community and working with various groups of artists, which I think is a positive thing, of course. But I'm curious, when you work with a collective, I mean, that's very similar to working with a business or a company in a lot of ways. The website does encourage you to trademark any logos that you might be using. Is that something that you've done with your events? Is there a constant logo or identity that you're trying to project? And I mean, I think it would be extremely damaging, the misuse or misrepresentation of something like that to a collective. So have you gone through any legal process when it comes to collective work?
The collective has a logo that one of the members, who's a graphic designer, designed. We're pretty small fish, really, so we didn't go through any legal anything about that. I'm not too worried about it either because the cooperative itself is kind of a subgroup to the festival, so it's kind of in the background, really.
Okay.
Doesn't really get a lot of attention.
Okay, that's something that you kind of want to keep within the community to begin with. I mean, I do think that you should be a little bit wary. We talked about the pros and cons earlier of posting online, and it is really just as simple as somebody enjoying your design, and next thing you know, it's gone everywhere. Like as much as we'd like to say we'd like to keep this within the community, that is the danger of online posting, right? Is it's very hard to contain it within the community once it's online. right?
Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to bring up too was just in terms of, I know that we've kind of discussed this previously, and you're not familiar with Crystal Castles, but there was a lawsuit between Trevor Brown and Crystal Castles in 2008. Basically, I found it really interesting because in this situation, they had taken one of his designs, one of his visual designs, and used it on their album cover, which again wasn't a problem when it was a small project. However, when the album exploded and went international, of course, that's when Trevor came knocking on their door and was kind of curious where they had gotten the image for their album cover. And this situation, they claimed that they had found it on the street on a flyer, very, very innocent. I'm just kind of curious now if something was to happen, considering there is the internet, and like 9 times out of 10, we assume when something is appropriated by another artist, it's because they found it on a social media site, they found it on Twitter, Facebook, something along these lines. But it can happen very much the old school way of simply seeing an image on a poster, perhaps going to an event or a show, seeing something on stage. So I was just kind of curious, would you treat or feel any differently about this? Like if it was something that happened in the virtual world versus the real world?
I don't know.
No?
No. I don't know.
Okay. The other thing is there's a very thin line between something that's considered inspiration and someone simply like appropriating your work. It's a very recognizable, you've had a heavy hand in it. Is this something that you consider flattering when someone's drawn a lot of inspiration from your work, or is it somewhat concerning?
I think in some extents it's inevitable. I mean, some people blatantly obviously seem like somebody else, and then some people it's just kind of um, it's just kind of a I guess in the post production world for audio, like for music creation, they'd call it a sound alike. Where they create a scene that almost sounds like another person's song, and it seems to happen a lot, whether it's intentional or not. There's a lot of unintelligent musicians out there that create music that sounds like Nickelback or
Mm.
this or that, or you know what I mean. So it's I personally prefer a unique creation, but sometimes people just comfortably instinctually create, and yeah, sometimes it can almost seem literally like something else. But it seems to happen all the time. As for my convictions about it, I don't have any strong convictions about it. It seems like in the creative industry, it's almost a dog eat dog world, anyways. So, not to say that you should have a
Hmm.
negative attitude towards it, but just as a perspective kind of thing, I don't really have a strong opinion about it.
Okay. All right. Well, it does make sense. I mean, it is pretty hard to protect yourself. The very idea of being able to post things online basically is this constant sharing and growing of information. The Canadian Copyright Act was created originally in 1921, and it underwent its most recent revision in 2011. Now, believe it or not, it had not been updated since 1997, hence why it mostly focused on pirating concerning cassette tapes and remixing. This bill, BC11, was put into place using a concept called digital locks, which covered new technologies and methods of sharing that was created by the internet. We now actually have some of the most extreme and restrictive digital locks in the world. Do you feel that digital locks are allowing for creative freedom, allowing artists to post, without having to be concerned or having to worry about people pirating their work? Or do you feel that by putting these stricter laws on sharing, we're actually limiting growth in the process of exploring new ideas off one another?
I think for certain artists, it's probably a big deal, like photographers, graphic designers, people that charge money for digital content, and that's primarily their income. For other people in the industry, I doubt it's a massive big deal. I'm sure there's some exceptions that I'm not thinking of, but for me, it's not a big deal.
No, I definitely think in most facets that people work in. I mean, if you even think about science, if you think about technology, things like this, I guess overall, I do have to agree with you because if there wasn't this constant sharing, we all think about things in a different way. So it's very easy to put something out there, and you may not have thought about it or, analyzed it in a certain way, but somebody maybe working in a whole other field sees your work, and who knows where they're going to be able to take it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, it's just kind of stuff to think about. And of course, I'll continue to learn through this investigative study and apply it to my own work. I kind of hope some of the things that I've discussed maybe you can think of as well. I do think you have like a really optimistic and open-minded notion of sharing and putting your work out there, which is great. And in terms of music, you definitely have yourself covered, and that's really educational for me as well. So I'm basically going to end the interview on that note. I would definitely want to thank you once again for giving me all the time, and you have yourself a wonderful day. Okay, Jonah?
You too.
Thank you. Bye.